Africa has a population of 1.34 billion people and a combined GDP of over 2.6 trillion US dollars as of December 2018. This provides a big market for the African countries to trade. To benefit from the intra-trade within the continent, African countries signed a treaty known as the African Continental Free Trade Area to conduct business and boost the economies of various countries. Uganda is among the 34 countries that have been ratified for the goods and services to traverse the continent without non-tariff barriers, and this came into effect in January this year. However, the question we put forward tonight is, will Uganda compete with some of the largest economies such as Nigeria, South Africa and Egypt, among others? In this episode of Business Perspective, we dig deeper into Uganda's comparative advantage on the African continent as compared to others. Welcome to Business Perspective. I am Isabella Tubume. Please be sure to download the Afro mobile application and catch this show on your mobile phone on the go. Now, Uganda, the Pearl of Africa, has got various goods and services which can compete favorably with the rest of the world. In Africa, Uganda has a comparative advantage as compared to other countries, and if harnessed, the export earnings for the country would triple. As we speak, Uganda still grapples with so many goods to compete with other countries, yet the production capacity is minimal. To understand where Uganda as a country should put more emphasis in terms of production and productivity, Jane Nalunga, the Executive Director of SEATINI Uganda, gives more light on where Uganda will win big.
The Continental Free Trade Area is as it is. It's a free trade area and the continent is Africa. So what it means that Uganda is part of that bigger market where we have a preferential trade, where we can trade our goods and services. So basically, a free trade area is where countries can be able to trade at a preferential market, like there are no high tariffs. You can be able to send your goods and services to that market, and you can be able to trade on good terms.
Okay. Does Uganda have what it takes to compete favorably with other African countries to partake in the continental free trade area?
Any market is supposed to be competed. You have to compete. You have to have products. And and I think that's one of the biggest challenges facing a country like Uganda, that there is a market. Because, for example, the Continental Free Trade Area provides Uganda with almost 1.2 billion people. Those are about 54 countries. So it's a huge market. But at the end of the day, we need to ask ourselves, what are we sending there? What are the products we want to send there? So it becomes a challenge.
Okay, so in your opinion, what do you think Uganda should focus on before we can actively compete against other countries?
What we could concentrate on, because like I have said, the markets are there. In fact, these days the issue is not market access, it's market entry. How would you enter market and sustain your presence or sustain your product's presence in those markets? What Uganda needs to do is to produce. In fact, we should be concentrating on products so that at the end of the day, when we say we are negotiating a CFTA, we already have our products. But the challenge is the quality and the quantity.
All right, so away from quality and quantity that you've pointed out, let's look at the cost of production, which is extremely high for countries such as Uganda. But in cases of countries such as Egypt, where the government helps and subsidizes the cost, how can we meet halfway? What can we do such that it's easy, or the cost of production is reduced on the people here in Uganda?
Government has to put resources in agriculture. the private sector, the small-scale farmers can't go it alone. And we have seen even developed countries like EU. EU, they have what they call CAP, Common Agricultural Policy. They put money there. The US, they have the Farm Bill. They put money there to help their producers. So government has to put money in the productive sector. That's agriculture, tourism, but especially agriculture, you know. And government has to put money in the post-harvest handling, you know, like the silos, stores, drying facilities, you know.
All right, finally, are you optimistic of the future of the Continental Free Trade Area?
Optimism will come when, depending on how far we have, you know, organized as a country to be able to utilize that market. If we are not careful, we can end up becoming a market, a supermarket for other people's products. So we need to prepare. Our private sector need to be part of this process because the process is still going on, by the way. Ideally, trading under the CFTA started in January this year, but we are not yet ready. All the continents, all the other countries are not ready. But also negotiations are still going on. So the private sector should be part of the negotiations so that, you know, because in negotiations we have what they call offensive, what you want to get from other markets, but also defensive. What are you defending? You know, so the private sector has to be part of those negotiations.
This is one of the country's finest, Uganda's coffee, the nation's treasure. In the last financial year, the export earnings from only coffee increased as compared to 2019. Unfortunately, it has not been given the much needed attention it requires to compete favorably. Experts believe if maize and coffee are given the much needed attention, Uganda will benefit from the intra-Africa trade more than any other country. However, is government committed to elevating poverty through the Africa Continental Free Trade Area? Amelia Chambade, the former Minister of Trade and now the Presidential Advisor on Industries, explains.
I know most of you have been asking if we have East African Community, we have COMESA, we have the tripartite. Why are we going for the African Continental Free Trade Area? Number one is to create a broader market for you Ugandans, for Africans, and for all of us. Number two is to create a bigger negotiating base and powerful base for negotiation. We realize that, first of all, the population is 1.3 billion. And then when you look at the GDP, it's about 3.4 trillion US dollars. And that is definitely a big force to reckon with. So there are some highlights that I could point out in our negotiations. For example, we looked at trade in goods, that we are creating this market access for our goods. You're making soap here. Let us make sure that we are also exporting this soap to Ghana, to Nigeria. We are looking also at the services because we can't look at the goods alone. I want me, if I have a legal farm, to go and establish a legal farm in Zambia without too many, without non-tariff barriers, without too taxes and all that. I want to go and establish a saloon in Nigeria. Then we established an African Observatory Dashboard. What does this mean? This dashboard shows the commodities that are being traded in Uganda, commodities that are being traded in Kenya, so that I know when I'm in Ghana, I know that if I have to go to Uganda, I'll be able to get coffee, I'll be able to get tea, I'll be able to get this and this. And all this is online on the computer on the African Observatory Dashboard, whereby you know which products am I able to access in this particular country. Then we thought about the digital payments. Because if I'm supposed to move from here to Ethiopia? Does it mean I have to change currency? I have to do what? So digital payments are ideal. So these are some of the issues that we have been negotiating and making sure that we ease the mode of doing business. So let us talk about Uganda. Uganda in the African Continental Free Trade Area. Uganda, we came in as East African Community. So we signed in as a regional bloc. So that is where we have Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, South Sudan, and Rwanda. How are we going to do business? We are engaging the private sector because we want the private sector also to tell us what they want to deal in. Which tariffs should they should we include as per their request? So now this awareness, this is part of the awareness now. I'm talking to you in business perspective, so that you are also aware that this is a ready market for you, a ready market for your products, but also a ready market for you to go and bring in products without too much of a hassle, without taxes. So what are we benefiting? Because I've had people asking me, but Honorable, you keep opening up these markets. We as Ugandans, me as a farmer in Nachesanja, Galabi, in Moduma, how am I benefiting from this? You as a farmer, you have been growing, let's say, maize. You have been growing coffee all this time. And you are selling your coffee to the local gin or processor in Jeza. And they give you even a very low price. The time has come for you now to start growing coffee in a group so that you have bulk. For example, I Chambade, I join with Msoke, with Salongo, and we have our coffee. Okay, we can go and process it in the first stage, but at least we look for another, a higher market to get dollars at least. So I'd like to appeal to you, Ugandans, that please embrace this opportunity. Don't confine yourself to your village. Don't confine yourself to your country. There are many other opportunities for you. That is why we work tooth and nail to make sure that you benefit from these markets.
This indicates that Uganda is on the right track. However, this treaty calls for the total elimination of trade and non-trade barriers. So how will government bodies promote trade on the African continent by eliminating the non-trade barriers? This and more after the break. Welcome back from that short commercial break, and remember to download the Afro mobile application for all premium content from Next Media. Now, in this episode, we analyze the country's comparative advantage in Africa after the commencement of the African Free Continental Trade Area in January. The key pillars of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area include progressively liberalized trade in services, corporate on investment, intellectual property rights and competition policies, and gradually eliminate tariff and non-tariff barriers to trade in goods and services. Now, to achieve this, government agencies have to play a crucial role in Uganda's economy to grow. The Uganda Revenue Authority is one of those who must play their part. I had a business chat on how the authority is facilitating the African Continental Free Trade Area. Abel Kagumide, the Commissioner of Customs, sits down with us.
It's a huge thing for us as a country because we are signatories to the African Continental Free Trade Area. And to the ordinary Ugandan is that we are looking to a market of about 1.3 billion people for our goods. And when you look at what is happening ever since the government started the policy on import substitution. Our Ugandans have been involved in a lot of production. And as our niche as a country has always been agriculture and agro-processing. So we are looking to intra-Africa trade. Intra-Africa trade means that we trade with our neighbors within the country, within the continent. And what it means for the ordinary Ugandan is that now what you produce will not only end in Uganda, will not end in only East Africa, but it will end into all the African countries. The role of Uganda Revenue Authority is to make it so easy for our traders to access those markets very fast in terms of trade facilitation. So we've come up with so many trade facilitation measures. The first one is, you talked of like the small medium enterprises now. We give them safe passage at our one-stop border posts. Before, they would take longer to clear through our borders. Now, with the coming of the African Continental Free Trade Areas and the concept of one-stop border posts, is that you cross through. You just drive through and move to your destination, because Kenya will not stop you, Uganda will not stop you, Somalia will not stop you, Ethiopia will not stop you until you reach your market, because you have what we call, we've removed what we call tariff barriers, non-tariff barriers, with the agreement coming into force 1st July. And the other one that we have done is that we have what we call certificates of origin, which allow people to export to different countries. So when you have a certificate of origin which is recognized by all parties to the African Continental Free Trade Area, it means that you just trade through, no one will stop you. So it removes the import duty rates which you would pay. So if you are not paying import duty rates, then the goods become cheaper and you can easily access that market, unlike before.
While we've looked at the success stories, can we hear of the challenges we've encountered thus far?
The challenge, like I say, as a government, I still think our policy, the ministry in charge of policy, this is Minister of Trade, should come up with a comprehensive trade policy that will protect our local manufacturers and producers, and assure them, our local investors, and assure them that actually this market will always be available as they do the production. Because if they don't do that, then that means if you are trading amongst each other, we are allowing others also to bring their things here. So if they bring their things here and they compete with what we are producing here, then again it will distort the whole market. And so there will be some bit of a policy that is agreed on at African level, African Union level, so that we have a smooth trade. There is something we are good at, there is something the other one is good at, so that you don't compete in the same market with the same products.
Has the business community in Uganda embraced the African Continental Free Trade Area?
You know, businessmen, they always look at maximizing profits. If you're in business, whatever opportunity opens up for them. You remember when South Sudan opened, even when there was war, people could risk and take bananas to South Sudan as long as they can make profit. And I think they need to exploit it. But as government, we need to support them, because we need a clear regulatory framework that is going to give them an opportunity to trade easily. The most traded goods, of course, I wouldn't bring it, because we categorize them into manufactured goods and then agricultural goods. Mainly we trade in agricultural products. Manufactured goods that are selling well now are things which we have done because of the industrial policy and the government policy on import substitution. If you look at tires, no one knew that Uganda would export tires. My take is that traders should trust government, and especially us at Revenue Authority, that we are doing everything possible to facilitate their trade within the East African community and beyond the East African community, especially in the under the African Continental Free Trade Area framework.
Uganda is an agricultural-based country, and that for us is a comparative advantage. Now, for us to maximize on its potential, comprehensive policies have to be put in place so that we can compete favorably as a nation against other African countries. Thank you so much for being part of this week's edition of Business Perspective. Remember, we do stream live on air and as well on the Afro mobile application. From me, my producer Lydia Nabakoza, and the entire crew, God bless and good night.